Hello, everybody. My name is Marc Bernstein. I'm the CEO of Balto, and we got an awesome webinar for you today. But first, we're going to give everyone just a couple minutes to trickle in. So we're going to get everything started in just around 2 minutes. Hang tight, grab yourself a snack, and we'll get started in just around 2 minutes. While we wait for folks to trickle in, Heather and Bobby, let's warm this thing up. So we were noticing right before we got started, everybody, that Bobby and I both have keyboards in our offices. I don't know if that's a good thing or a distraction, but a little bit of both. Bobby, what kind of music are you into?
Electronic, mainly, house music.
And just a hobby?
Yep, yeah, keeping myself busy.
Yep. Well, sorry, what'd you say?
How about yourself?
You know, I'll actually announce to the world here, I just got engaged a couple weeks ago, so I now have a fiance.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. Feeling good about it, as one would hope. And she's actually a children's music therapist. So she works at the local children's hospital and plays music for kids who have long-term hospital stays. So the keyboard is actually hers. I can dabble a little bit with some jazz and blues, but nothing like what she can do.
Nice.
Wow, what a great job. Sounds like you got yourself a catch there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we'll give everyone just another 15, 30 seconds or so, and then we'll get things kicked off. And Heather, what is the background of that gorgeous painting behind you?
Yeah, so actually was my mom. She had a home office, and unfortunately, she recently passed, and I inherited it. I love it. I love the colors. I also got some workout equipment back there. This is like, I think it's everyone did this during COVID. I remodeled my home. We started a hydroponic farming system in our backyard. I made it in-home gym. I did basically every COVID cliche you could, drank a lot of wine. So this is now my office. So yeah, it's been quite a transition.
Yeah. Well, what a beautiful gift from your mother, and sorry to hear about your loss. But it's funny because everybody, I think, in the world is able to bond over this shared COVID experience that we all had. So hopefully we all come out of this better. We are, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Heather.
I think the world is opening up. I know Bobby was at Lead Gen Worlds. I think that we're starting to see some light at the end of this tunnel. So I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely.
So folks, we are just 3 minutes in. Let's get this thing kicked off. To reintroduce myself, and then we'll introduce, of course, Heather and Bobby in just a second. I'm Marc Bernstein. I'm the CEO at Balto. We are real-time guidance for sales and service teams. So most folks in the contact center environment trying to increase conversions, trying to do a better job delivering a great customer experience, that is what Balto is all about. And boy, do we have a cool topic for you all today. It's what we're calling 30 by 30. And that is, how can you increase your contact rate by 30%? And how can you increase your conversion rate by 30%? Two huge levers that any sales operation or appointment setting operation is thinking about. Well, those are the things that we're specifically going to touch on today. Bobby, I can turn it over to you first. You're on the far left here if you want to give a quick intro and your background.
Yes, my name is Bobby Hakimi. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Convoso. We are a contact center platform. We primarily focus in lead gen. And like Mark said, we are here to show you guys how to convert, connect better, and put in the right tools to ensure that we don't get blocked and the contact rate stays up.
Beautiful. Heather, over to you.
Well, I've had the luxury of using both of your guys' software, but I'm a 22-year call center veteran, 22 years in call centers. I've done sales, lead gen, collections, customer service. If it's had a call center, I've done it. But most recently, about 11 years in solar lead generation. I've been an owner, a consultant, an employee in hundreds of call centers over those 22 years. I've had quite a switch in technology as I've been part of those 22 years of call center experience. I'm currently the Chief Revenue Officer at DaVinci, which is a solar SaaS software and lead generation company.
Thank you so much, Heather. So today, so many solar operations and home improvement operations were looking previously at their door knocking programs and saying, woof, did COVID deal us a little bit of a blow there? So the telephone operation, the call center, has never been more important, and we are so excited to have this partnership with Convoso, Balto, and DaVinci together to explain to everyone a little bit around how you can increase your contact rates and conversion rates. But first, a poll. So we're going to launch this poll out for you guys, one question at a time. The question is, what are your biggest frustrations with your current dialer? And you can check all that apply. We'll give it around 30 to 45 seconds for folks to answer that poll. So everyone wants to take a second, answer the poll. What are your biggest frustrations around your current dialer? One of the really cool things about this poll is that we're ultimately, very, very soon, going to have data on how all of your peers view their dialers. So not just you having your frustrations, but you're able to see what your peers are saying, what they like and what they don't like, so you can figure out how your operation stacks up to others in the industry. Just another second for the poll here. All right, poll is closed. Looks like the #1 frustration is low contact rate. Maybe that's because we incepted everyone with that thought at the beginning of the webinar today. Hopefully that's what you were thinking going into it, but the low contact rate does seem like the clear winner or loser here, so to speak. And then it looks like we have a second place for dropped calls and long wait times, and that's tied with limited insight into performance. Very interesting. It looks like caller ID reputation and call flagging is perhaps a little bit lagging behind. So that's something that as regulations change and all the different shake and stir things change, we will see exactly how we deal with that. If you want to launch the second poll, please. The second poll is, what are your most common reasons that agents lose calls? So we're thinking in an appointment context or sales context, or even just lose a customer and generate a frustrated customer. What's the most common reason that your agents lose calls? Take another few seconds there and let everyone answer what your perspective is. Just another few seconds before we close the poll. All right, and the answer is, wow. #1, 82% of people said poor or lack of objection handling. Whoa, so that really does seem to be the call killer. And then the second one, very interesting, was poor agent engagement / active listening. And the not confirming the prospect's details, like qualifying the prospect properly, or a lack of confidence, fell pretty far behind the other options. So thank you all for that poll. We're going to talk today about how we can address that. And this is a perfect time to kick it over to Bobby and Convoso, talk a little bit about how you can understand the causes of call flagging and blocking. Then Balto will take a quick stand on best practices for converting your leads. And then Heather will help us tie it all together. How do the systems work together, and how do you have a smart, cohesive operation for using a powerful dialer and real-time functionality to drive home services and solar sales. With that, over to you, Bobby.
Thanks, Mark. So yeah, to better understand why this is happening, why contact rate is low, it's not just one area that's affecting this. There's many areas. As you guys know, we all get these calls now, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, spam, scam, fraud. So there's a lot of labeling that's not happening by the carriers. That's one of the biggest reasons or bigger reasons why today the contact rate is low. And the algorithms and the companies that they're working with is just not working. They haven't figured it out, so they kind of have this blanket algorithm that flags calls. There's also other areas that are causing low contact rate, which are apps, as you guys know, RoboKiller, Normal Robo, and then these three entities that work with the telcos that have also their own apps that they have users install to flag or block calls. And then there's consumers. So many of you guys know there's a lot of reports happening to the FTC. There's a FTC database that consumers have now the ability to report numbers to, and then that database is used by various platforms, carriers, call blocking apps, and a lot of other platforms out there using that data to prevent spam or fraud calls happening. And then last but not least, stir shaken. I'm sure you guys heard a lot about it. What's been happening in the past is everybody was able to, anybody really out there could just sign up with a VoIP carrier, put in a call ID and place a call. They could pretend to be me, they could pretend to be the police station. So that was a big problem because a lot of fraud was happening and nobody was able to trace down the calls. After a lot of years of frustrations and trying different things out, the government proposed the telcos come up with a solution, which is stir shaken. And what stir shaken is that carriers like us or service providers like us, they are responsible to sign the call. So moving forward, as every call is placed, no matter what the call ID is, there will be actually a certificate attached to the call. And so if anything happens, such as fraud or illegal calls where there's no opt-in, we now don't rely on a caller ID anymore. The end user will have that certificate, and the telco will then be able to trace back and figure out who it is and hold people accountable. And that's the purpose and reason for stir shaken. It also is providing the telcos the ability to block calls. Say there's no call that's signed, those at some point, they mentioned June 30th. We're not so sure if it's going to happen by that time, but at some point in the near future, they will start blocking calls if they're not signed. Furthermore, at some point, you guys will also on your phone see A, B, a C, or a checkbox that says verified. For B, it might be something not verified, but we know it's good, or we know the source is valid. And then C, it's not confirmed. And if you don't have any of these three, if it's not signed at all, there's a higher likelihood that the carriers are going to start blocking those calls. So
if I can jump in real quick, I consult a lot for a lot of call centers. I can tell you that we all noticed this drop in connectivity drastically in October, I think, of 2019. We felt it happen day and night when the law changed, and it steadily started dropping down further and further. And I think most people are afraid of call blocking when really the bigger challenge is the spam, likely the telemarketing, the fraud, all that stuff showing up. So carriers aren't crazy out there just blocking all of our calls arbitrarily with no reason or rhyme. There are a couple of rules of why and how they do it. Mostly they think you're fraud because you're high volume dialing. But for the most part, what killed it for us was all this telemarketing spam stuff suddenly on our phones. And good news, bad news. The good news is there are softwares, there are processes, there are best practices that can resolve this issue if you're a legitimate business. The bad news is it's going to get worse before it gets better. The laws aren't fully in place. They're making it more challenging. It's going to really, you can see this as two sides of the same coin. On the good side and on the flip side, all those bad actors out there who are truly the true definition of fraudulently robo-dialing, it's going to be really hard for them. the good, that's good news for us, right? Those of us who are legitimately dialing. The bad news is the good guys are getting caught up in it. We're having to jump through a lot of hoops. We're having to do a lot of best practices, and we're being blocked or flagged or having some of the same issues that the bad actors are. So I do know I hear a lot of my clients very concerned about this, and I have experienced it myself as an owner and as a consultant, and how drastic this has really, really affected us over the last 12 to 16 months since the law started.
Yep, thank you for that, Heather. So talking about the different solutions. So again, it's not one area that you guys need to really focus on improving. It all depends. So look at your data first. Is it high intent data? Is it low intent data? Right? If it's low intent data, you probably don't want to leave them with a lot of voicemails or start blasting them with text messages, because they're not really, it's co-rich. So you want to be easy about leaving a lot of text messages and voicemails, and also not harassing them, because if they're low intent data, you probably are not the only person calling them. On the flip side, on high intent data, you want to be strategic. You want to think of, calling them, leaving a personalized voicemail, or maybe texting them after the third call if you haven't gotten hold of them, and really get creative about having a multi-channel outreach to them, so they understand that this is a real company, and this is the company that I reach out to. So you want to think about those type of strategies in terms of outreach. The other thing is, like Heather said, the caller IDs getting blocked. So until there is a really good solution out there, you guys want to use call ID rotation. So with us, for example, we have a report that looks at your call volume and suggests, okay, get these many numbers in this area code based on call volume, so you guys don't get caught up with all the bad actors out there. It's a band-aid. It's not really a solution long-term, but until they all get their acts together and figure out how to solve this, and the carriers and the government come together with a solution that works for everybody, we're forced to use a lot of numbers to ensure that we don't get blocked. So running a report like that looks at that volume and suggests how many numbers to buy and what area code, and constantly monitoring that has helped tremendously with our customers.
Bobby, too, I'd like to add to that. One thing that's been challenging for my large enterprise clients that I've consulted with is they don't always know where they're dialing the most data, right? So if you're purchasing leads, you're either purchasing a list, or you give all your area codes, or you give all your zips or states, and leads kind of flow in how they flow in, right? Because you can't really guess who's going to opt in the US at what time, right? So say, for example, all of a sudden they get a lot of opt-ins in Houston. Maybe there was a flood, and so everyone's home and they're taking calls and they're interested in solar now. And so all these calls start coming in. They don't necessarily always know that suddenly they're dialing this 214 area code a lot. So a lot of people, when I go in there, oh, don't worry, I have my DID thing covered. I have 100 DIDs. Well, if you're calling 10, maybe 100,000 people in that 214 area code, and you have 1,000 caller IDs, it doesn't matter. So it's really important that you have a system or a software that in real time, in a strategic, consistent way, can say you need to release these 50 caller IDs and buy 3,000 more in this zip code, because that's where you're actually dialing. People will say to me, why am I getting marked spam likely so quickly? I have 1,000 caller IDs. Well, the answer is they're in the wrong areas. That multiple caller ID effect only actually works for you if you're calling that area that much. So there are a lot of softwares like Convoso out there that will show you where you're dialing by DID, and that's so important. The trick here, guys, is getting around. The way I visualize it is Verizon's carrying a phone call. It's about to hand it off to AT&T, and AT&T's looking at this DID saying, wait a second, you've called 42,000 people today. You can't possibly be a real person. You're either fraud, robo-dialer, I don't like you, I don't want to take this call. Or sometimes, more often than not, it still takes the call, but then it goes and puts it spam likely, telemarketer fraud, right? So think about this happening on every single call. You're dialing hundreds of people. Every time these carriers are looking at this number saying, are you a robot? Are you not a robot? Are you AI? What's happening here? So what Bobby's saying is the solution is when they go look at that Verizon's handing off to AT&T or whatever carrier it is, and they see you've only made 82 calls on that line, they're going to connect it, and you're way less likely for them to think it's fraud or telemarketing. They just think it's someone at an office who's calling you. So how do you do that? You have to have enough DIDs in the right area codes that if you call 100,000 people, when they see that, it still only looks like you called 82. So it's kind of the workaround to it. But where I've seen other competitors and other companies try to say they fixed it is not an understanding where the variation needs to be. It needs to be where you're actually dialing that day to keep yourself from getting spam likely.
Absolutely, that was a perfect explanation. Thank you so much, Heather, for that. So yeah, having said that, that's again, it's your reputation, right? Your phone number is your reputation. So there's a lot of platforms coming out there now that are helping with that reputation. One of them being Google Call Verified. So that's a platform that we've also recently integrated and allows you to register your number with Google. It allows you to put in a call reason and a logo. So when your customers get your calls, they actually see an image of you, they see your company name and a reason for why you're calling. And your contact rate at that point will skyrocket because they really know, all right, this is the entity that's reaching out to me that I'm interested in talking. So that's one really important tool that you guys would definitely want to implement. And
yeah, Bobby, can I jump in there too? Because as an owner, I think that like half the people listening to this are gonna be like, that's so cool, I can say my company's name. And the other half are like, crap, I do not want to say it because I'm cold calling people. Essentially, I'm legally cold calling, but I don't want to put my name. So the good option is that you have opportunities with these registries to test and try different sentences or different things. You have a certain number of characters, I don't remember the amount, but you might want to say energy reduction, right, as the what's calling. You can register and test what's working for you. You can try different DBAs. So I think half of you hear that and think that's so awesome. And again, it depends on your data. If they went to my davinci.com and then they see DaVinci's calling me, that's going to do great things, right? But if they went to win a Target gift card and they accidentally opted in for me to call them, it might be off-putting. So the feature is going to help you either way. So if you're one of those companies out there thinking, crap, I have low intent data, you can try different sentences that are, you know, compliant and legal that give you the best result. You can also A/B test what works better. Does it work better if I use the word sales? Does it work better if I say energy or bill reduce or electricity? You can test what's going to work better for you and not be as concerned about it looking like a sale, just a cold call.
Exactly what, I mean, that's exactly correct. Because again, you know, it depends, high intent, low intent, but regardless of what the intent data is, there's also now a tool or a website where you can go and register your numbers, and that registers it with the 3 entities that's working with Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T. And so by law, they have to allow you guys to register your numbers so they don't get flagged. Now, what that does is it will prevent your calls from getting flagged as fraud, which are blocked, or any type of status that's blocked. However, that does not protect you from the spam. So there's 2 different areas that we need to be need to differentiate and be cautious about, because blocking and flagging are 2 separate things. The blocking will eventually solve itself with stir shaken, but the flagging, that's still going to happen. Just like emails, where we're getting tons and tons of emails, and we get, you know, we get a little thing on top of Google's inbox that says potential spam. That will continue happening. And so to solve that, like Heather said, you have to make sure you have the right amount of numbers and the right area code, and have a report that continuously monitors that and suggests, okay, you know what, this is the area that I need to purchase numbers on. And you know, in the past, I've seen people be hesitant because they don't want to spend the money to buying the numbers. But ultimately, what's going to happen is you're going to spend more minutes and more manpower talking to people that aren't interested, or just answering machines. And at the end of the day, that affects your contact rate. So get the right amount of numbers, monitor them weekly, ensure that you're getting the right area codes, get rid of the ones that you aren't getting traffic on anymore, and continuously monitor that, because that's really going to make a difference.
Yeah, Bobby, I would like to jump into on cost, because this is kind of my single biggest challenge when I'm consulting, and I consult for a lot of different solar and home services companies. And I always get this like, oh, I have to pay extra just for DIDs, or I have to pay extra for, we'll talk about Balto, these extra costs. And it's always just such a simple math equation. Like, you know, in solar world, our net cost per acquisition is high. So if I just go through and say, if you spoke to 30% more people, same marketing budget, same amount of employees, which we all know the truth is you need less employees when you get more effective, but we won't even go there. You You have the same fixed cost. I'm paying $1 million a month to make 5 million. If I said now you're speaking to 30% more people, what is that output number? And it's always massive. It's always like, you're gonna make another 2.3 million by paying this $10,000 a month bill, and you'll be more compliant, so less likely to get lawsuits. You'll have better retention because your employees will stick longer because they're not calling the same person over and over and they're not being screamed at. The cyclical effects of this $10,000 investment that's going to get you, and 10,000 is an arbitrary number, it's not a price of anything, but the ratio is always dramatic. You think about this, if those of you who are owners or decision makers, 30% more contact means 30% more net revenue, and that net revenue is actually not even net revenue because you don't have your cost doesn't increase 30%. So talking to 30% more people does not cost you the 10,000 or whatever $1,000 you're going to use to get the software. So employee retention, better service, less lawsuits, less TCPA class actions, less government interference. Like, it's always a no-brainer to invest in something that's going to increase your contact rates by 30%.
Heather, I think that's such a good point. And I remember that when I was on the sales floor, and the sales folks used to talk about it all the time. There's definitely the retention piece of, do you feel like you're spamming your customers? If so, it's harder to be in that job versus if you're connecting with real qualified prospects that you're excited to introduce your services to. But the second piece to it is when you're on the sales floor and you have a high contact rate, things are humming. Like, that's how you get in a groove. That's how you get energy up. And, we always noticed that productivity would go way up when contact rate went up versus when you have one of those like slow days and low contact rate days and you're sitting back and then one of the calls connects and you jump up and say, oh, hey, and then you already lost them. So, yeah. The question I maybe pose for our listeners is, when you have a high contact rate, what other benefits does that give your business aside from the contact rate in being able to actually deliver what you want to deliver to your customers?
Yeah, Mark, I would add to that too. Like, I had this one client I was consulting, very large call center, and their new hires coming out of training, they only got a chance to pitch about 7 to 12 customers a day, but they made 400 to 500 calls. So you know how long it took them to get good at their pitch, because you have to pitch 200 times to get your pitch down. It would take them 2 weeks because they just weren't speaking to any actual live people. So there is that cyclical effect. Also, when you have win after win after win, you just get, it's psychological. People start performing better. And then again, having been a call center owner myself and having spent millions on marketing, there's something, it just eats at me, it eats at my soul. I think about it when I lay asleep at night. I spend $100 for 100 leads and I only speak to 19 of them. So I think about it's like 71 customers, I spend $100 and I never get them on the phone. And it's not because they're not interested, it's because I'm blocked or it says spam or they don't know it's me. So it is such a huge cost, that cost. So to get that 30% more is just, it's so dramatic. And it does right by everyone. So it's always worth the investment.
Totally. It's a lever. It's not like a little improvement here, a little improvement there. It's like a lever you can pull that moves your business to a different stage.
Yep.
Fantastic. So Bobby, you want to take us back with looking inside Convoso?
Yeah. So when we first built this, and it's been about over 3-4 months, we've been working on getting this data between all the carriers, and I was shocked at first. I wasn't sure if it's real, so we kept looking at it and digging into it. And so looking at these numbers, what we did is we compared all the numbers that are flagged and blocked and compared those calls to the calls that were placed with not flagged numbers. And so we saw the decrease in contact rate, success rate. So in our world, success rate means sales. We were not able to figure out if your numbers are getting blocked or not. So that's percentage of blocked calls, and then also an increase in answer machines. Now, what's really interesting is that AT&T by far is the most aggressive person. I thought it was first T-Mobile because we all seen that scam likely, but it turns out that AT&T is really aggressive when it comes to blocking. And as their phones are getting updated and more releases happening to phones, that's getting rolled out more and more. Now, what's interesting on T-Mobile's box, you'll see increased answering machines is less, meaning on the block calls, we actually have less answering machines. Well, the reason for it is that they end up blocking a lot more calls versus others. Their blocking mechanism isn't affecting the answering machine. So in this scenario, where AT&T blocks a call, it goes straight to voicemail. Where T-Mobile blocks calls, it goes to busy and other statuses. And so we've figured out that when you have a higher block rate at T-Mobile, you end up getting less answering machines. And you would assume, well, if we're getting flagged, our answering machine messages for the numbers that are getting flagged or blocked are higher. Well, with T-Mobile, that's not the case because they're doing a lot more blocking where the call doesn't even hit the answering machine versus others just send them straight to answering machine. So these statistics were really great to look at. You know, in the Convoso's platform, you can click show numbers, you can look at the numbers, and then decide to put them to rest, replace them, whatever you want to do with them. But this was a really eye-opening tool to see why these calls are getting blocked and what's happening to them. So here's an example for one of our what we call an asset list. It's basically a area code based caller ID list where you have X numbers per area code, and in this report, I mean, they don't have that many missing, but you can see on the right side where it suggests, okay, in a 210 area code, you are missing 2 numbers. And so this report, if you have the bigger picture, you'd see there's a little box that states how many calls do I want to place per number. We typically by default put 100. If you want to get really good at it, 50 is in my opinion the best, but that also means you need to buy tons more numbers. So once you run that report, it looks at your call volume for that period of time that you selected, and it suggests, okay, you need this many numbers, and at the bottom of the page is a little button that says make an order, and that's it, you're done. You get those numbers in there, and that's more or less how we can show you guys based on call volume what area codes you're missing.
Yeah, Bobby, you can set that to auto check itself as well, so it's not this manual thing that you have to do. What happens, like I was saying, you might start calling one area more than the other, so there's an opportunity for you to check that on a consistent basis. The challenge is people always say, why am I going spam likely so fast? The answer is always, well, you're heavily dialing in one area. So this report once will show you. You can also automate how often to check it as well, so it doesn't become this like manual process. But the cost of going spam likely, and this is again just one of those, having spoken from an owner seat in a call center, I can tell you the cost of going spam likely is so much more expensive. Remember, $100 a lead, I'm not getting hold of 30%. Suddenly that DID, I'm getting hold of no one. God forbid it's in California or Hawaii where solar's really, really a lot of money. I start getting that block. That cost of going spam likely, of my DID turning spam likely versus the $1 or $2 of buying a new caller ID, I mean, it's just a no-brainer again. Like, it just makes no sense. If I go spam likely for one day and I've bought, $100,000 worth of marketing or $10,000 worth of marketing, that $1.50 or whatever it is, $2 to get another caller ID would have saved me thousands of dollars of customers who didn't pick up. So it always makes sense to invest in the area codes.
Absolutely.
Bobby, thank you so much. Super cool overview of Convoso, and Heather, your expertise just shows through so much. So thank you for your thoughts on that too. Folks, I'll jump here to the relationship that we're all very aware of lost opportunities is lost revenue. And it's funny because we often look about revenue on the macro level, and we're looking at our monthly revenue and sales, and you look at it from month to month, and you look at the line graph go up, but we don't usually take it down to the agent level and say, when you have the conversations that your customers are having on the phone with your agents, where can you increase conversions and where can you increase revenue there? So a couple of the problems that different sales and appointment setting operations are experiencing, of course, first is no-shows. So there's actually a whole bunch of causes behind no-shows, including not confirming the right information. Maybe you got the house wrong. Maybe you didn't confirm the time and they thought it was one time and you thought it was another. Maybe you didn't confirm the day. But we all know that feeling of what happens when you send a rep out to the home and they knock and there's no one there. To what Heather mentioned earlier, not only is that a problem in efficiency and wasted costs, but that's how you get attrition with your folks who are out in the field. So, and then just imagine they're contractors, which is the case for a lot of operations. Very simply, there may be a day where they say, that's it. How can you make sure that your star sales reps don't leave and go somewhere else? The second is, in your contact center operation, when they're setting up appointments, one of the biggest problems they experience is retaining their learning. Back in the late 1800s, there was the scientist Hermann Ebbinghaus, and he pioneered something called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And what it basically said is that when you have any information that you learn, if that information is not consistently reinforced, you forget more and more and more of it over time. And he mapped out the pace at which you forget information over time. And what he found is that, let's say you're trained in the right way to do a sales call. Well, after 1 week, your agents are going to forget 59% of what they learned. 59%, over half in a single week. So what's left? It means that agents end up spending a whole bunch of time just like cowboying it and trying out this and trying out that, rather than using the best practices that you wish everyone would use on all of their calls. So the bigger your operation gets, the more painful this is, because the more cowboys you have on the floor and the less consistency you have. But you have all of this data in your operation, where if everyone were using the same strategies to try to set that appointment or close that deal, if everyone used the same strategies, you could test it. And you could say, when someone calls in and uses this opening question, or gives this value proposition, or asks the appointment this way, how effective is that? What percent of the time do they win the appointment? Versus if they use another option, what percent of the time they win the appointment? You can't do that when everyone's just cowboying it on their own. You can only do that when your entire sales or appointment setting team is acting in unison, using the same best practices that you wish everyone would use. So that results in a whole bunch of preventable mistakes. And we actually surveyed over 1,000 contact center agents at Balto in one of the largest surveys, to our knowledge, of any contact center agent population ever done. And agents said that approximately 1/3 of the calls they're on, it was 35% of the calls they're on, they lose for completely preventable reasons. That's crazy. Think about that operation Heather mentioned that had 7 to 9 pizzas a day, and take 2 of them and throw them in the garbage can. That's what's happening in your contact center at scale. And then, of course, we try to apply QA to this, and we have, managers try to listen to call recordings, or QA listen to call recordings, or training listen to call recordings. And all of those functions are very helpful, but we know that they're limited in how much they can do. Most operations are doing something like 2 to 4 calls per agent per month. Some of them are lucky enough to do 2 to 3 per week, but very few folks are doing more than 2 to 3 calls per week. So when you think about all the different opportunities your agents have, less than 5% of calls are actually being analyzed, scored, and coached on, and that's 95% of calls that aren't. So how do we capture that 95% opportunity?
I'd also add to that, Mark, I think that was exactly a great description of the problem, but I'd also add, like, the other problem with QA is that they are randomly pulling calls. And I have so many arguments with my reps always, because, like, you're only listening to my bad calls because we're listening to ones that don't turn into sales, or you're only listening to my good calls, which means we're not finding any coaching opportunities. So it's so right. It's so hard to listen to manpower in a call center that size, 1,000, 2,000 agents. It's almost impossible to give relevant feedback. And the second thing I would add is that turnover is something that's gigantic. And because of that, reps are coming in, they're getting on the phones for a while and turning over so fast, you never even get a chance to coach or fix or teach. So they would have been more successful. So those are 2 huge issues when it comes to large scale call centers trying to get where they're going.
Heather, that's such a good point. I've joked with Balto customers that, I call it the QA ultimatum. And that is, you have 3 options. You either listen to your good calls because you're trying to check that they're qualified appointments. You listen to your bad calls because you're trying to say what's happening and uncover problems. or you're listening to a random sample of calls so you can try to assign a score to every agent and allow folks to benchmark.
Yep.
No operation has the bandwidth to do all three. So if you don't apply some sort of tool at scale in order to be able to analyze everything, you're missing out on 2 out of those 3 categories. And pick your poison. If you're only doing 1 out of 3, that's a tough way to go. So the solution that Balto invented, we call real-time guidance. And what it does is it analyzes everything that the sales rep is saying as they're saying it, everything the customer is saying as the customer says it on that call, and in real time is giving the agent recommendations for how they can be as effective as possible. So some of the most common use cases are conducting effective discovery, not just jumping to the appointment. I was talking to someone about this the other day, and they were saying that agents, especially early on, get nervous, and they know that their manager is drilled in, you must ask for the appointment. So they just skip over discovery, they skip over building value, and they just jump right to the appointment. And of course, that's going to have a really low conversion rate. Then, of course, you need to make sure that you are capturing the right information to set your outside sales representative up for success. What is the roof like? What is the square footage? Is there shade? What is the address? And have you absolutely 100% confirmed that both spouses will be home if it's someone in their spouse? Those are the stuff that is make or break on a sales call. No one wants a one-legged close where you get to the home and someone says, oh, great, well, actually, my spouse wasn't here, but I'll take the first appointment. That's a tough place for a sales rep to be. And then, of course, when you're setting these appointments, you're going to get objections. That's naturally the part of any sort of business conversation. Is there's some, productive tension can be healthy. If your agent is prepared to empathetically understand the prospect's concern and overcome the objection by providing some sort of new information or a good question they can use to advance the call. But we've all heard the folks who respond to objections by just trying to pretend it didn't happen or just plow over the objection. And I think we'd all be a little bit scared if we listened and said, how many times a day do we think that's happening in our operations? Probably more than any of us would like. Heather, you got a thought there?
Yeah, I think that all of those things are true and scary, and it actually takes you a long time to find them out. So there's some analytics that can help you find some of those things out. But I would say, based on our survey too, I'm glad that everyone has kind of the same opinion as me, is that where you're really losing the customer is the reps just not trying. They're not rebuttaling, or they're like, I listen to reps all the time and think, how's their average talk time? 11 seconds, right? And you know what it is. There's 400 calls. Everyone's like, hi, no, I'm not interested, Kay. No, I'm not interested, Kay, right? And here I am counting $100 a lead, $200, $300, right? They're throwing away my money. So the challenge, I think, one of the great things is that this is going to alert me, let me know quickly that they're not rebuttaling. I can also see kind of at a macro level or micro level where I'm losing things. Like you said, there's certain lead types that you really do have to build rapport. And there's other lead types where you can't build rapport. They've been cold called by 16 different companies. You just need to jump straight to the ask. And so this kind of knowledge and analytics gives me a really good purview of how to change and scale. And then again, bringing it back into Convoso, it can tell at the list level, at the data source level, and pop a new script for me. So I can have it say, oh, that's a California lead and a high intent. And now a new script pops up that tells me exactly what I want your system to do, which is engage with the customer, have warm, engaging conversations versus low intent data that pops in. So I do think that where we lose the most of our money, I think as an owner and with a call center background, it's actually in the human error or the lack of human interest, and it's hard to find it. There's stats I can look at to try to find it. It also, another really great thing here with Balto is that it helps me understand where my customer or where my rep is losing the customer. Are they losing it in the pitch? Are they losing it in the intro? Are they losing it at the end? I can see some of those analytics, which makes a big, huge difference. So I could never get to the amount of data I wanted to with a QA team. So it's just so valuable, and it can tell me right away how to change my business decisions.
Heather, thank you so much. It's funny, in that survey that we conducted over 1,000 agents, we asked them, what is the #1 reason that you lose a call? And 67% of agents said it was either nervousness, boredom, or forgetting the right thing to say. 66% said their biggest problem was nervousness, boredom, or just forgetting the right thing to say. 24% said it was forgetting the right thing to say, or 22%. And that was actually about twice as much as folks that said that they weren't trained. Only 12% blamed their training. So we gave agents the option to say, I wasn't trained on this, my manager did a bad job, but they said, nah, it's on me, I just got nervous and forgot. So how can we help them in the moment, make sure that they're doing the right stuff? And then how can we give managers data and information on how agents are performing? So everything that happens on the agent side, we create a parallel, a mirror experience on the manager side. So every rebuttal that we'll suggest for your agent, and I'll show you all that in a sec, we show managers, here's the rebuttals that were recommended, and here's the percentage of time that your agent took that. So you're able to gain insight into 100% of your calls without having to listen to 100% of call recordings, which is impossible, or impossible for most operations. You're able to identify agent by agent, team by team, or even call by call, what was working and what wasn't. And then you're able to recommend the most effective rebuttals because you're able to test when they use rebuttal A, 27% of the time it's effective versus rebuttal B, 30% of the time it's effective. And I'll actually give a quick stat. There was one solar operation we were working with, and their most common objection was not interested. And I imagine that might be true for a lot of folks here. They had 2 different rebuttals that they were testing. One of them essentially responded with, why aren't you interested? And the other one responded with education, like telling the prospect something new. The one where they responded with education, telling the prospect something new, was literally 10 times more effective than the one they said, why aren't they interested? So if I could make one recommendation to folks, if you hear your agents say, why aren't you interested? Like, cut that one out right away, because you're losing 90% of your conversions that way.
Yep, Mark, I had a similar experience with one rebuttal. I remember thinking, this is horrible. If someone said this to me, I'd hang up on them. But it was something to the extent of when they said not interested, they said, oh, that means you already looked into it. So what didn't you like when you researched it? Right? And it's like, ooh, that's pretty tough. It worked. Just statistically, I could see in the testing, A/B testing, I would take a softer approach and more customer service, but it was a real kind of like bold statement. It's like, oh, so you've already looked into solar. What didn't you like about it? And I was surprised to see that. So as a decision maker with 22 years of experience, I would have vetoed that rebuttal because I just didn't, I wasn't sure about it, but it actually worked out better. So again, the truth is in the numbers.
Yeah. How interesting is it that like nowadays it's harder than ever to know like what intuition, it's harder than ever to follow your intuition and assume you understand how customers will react, because the landscape is changing so quickly. You know, how we all built our intuitions years ago might not be quite in line with the times and what customers expect in 2021.
100%, yes.
All right, so I think from here, I'll show everyone a super quick and speedy but effective live demo. So I'm going to share my screen. Give me just 1 second here. All right, so I think we can see this little dashboard over on the left and then Balto over on the right. I show this full screen first to set the stage. We'll go in the dashboard in a second, but your agent on the left is going to have whatever their main screen is up today. That's the dialer, that's the CRM, hopefully that's Convoso. And then on the right, Balto is going to kind of nestle in over here and ride along with the agent. You can think of it like a manager, a coach on the agent's shoulder, helping them out on every call. When the agent places a call outbound and connects, or if the call comes inbound, Balto will automatically sync with Convoso and kick in. And the checklist just went green to let the agent know like Balto is listening and on it. So I'll show you all Three things today. The first is the checklist section. These are the points that you wish your agents would hit on every call. It's a good opening question. It's active listening, like we talked about in the survey poll. It is a good closing question. It's confirming the appointment. The steps that you want agents to do every time, don't care who it is. So when I say, hey, so tell me, what got you thinking about updating your windows? Balto heard that, even though I stumbled, and automatically checked off I got that done. So this is like a window customer as example. Interesting. It sounds like you're saying you've been considering home renovations during COVID. Is that right? All right, well, thank you. Let me collect a little bit more information from you, and then we'll set up your appointment. How does that sound? And then I'll show you all the last checklist item. Hey, so great speaking to you today. Our consultant looks forward to their visit with you on the 5th. Have a great day. And it'll shoot a little bit of confetti, because we all know an agent who's engaged and excited and gets that quick reward right when they set the appointment is going to be a happier agent. So that's the checklist. Hit your key points. Then what everyone mentioned in the poll earlier is objections are huge. So what happens when a customer says, thanks so much, but I'm going to need to talk to my wife about this before I make any sort of decisions. Balto heard that and automatically popped up the rebuttals right there. So there's no flipping through scripts. There's no just winging it. There's no going off memory. It's right there. And the agent says, hey, I understand. It's so important to talk to your spouse about any sort of decision. Most couples are together in the evening by the time that both get home from work. Is that the case for you too? So Balto just heard me give that rebuttal, gave the agent a couple of options that they can use, recommended that rebuttal, and boom, in the back end is testing which rebuttal was used and did it ultimately seal the appointment. Now, the third thing that I think I built into the demo, the killer, is when the agent says, oh, no problem. Let's just set a tentative appointment for sometime next week. Balto will hear that and say, oh, I actually should clarify. You're receiving, it's a firm appointment. We're going to make sure that we're going to be there and you should be prepared. But if you need to cancel, you can give me a call back. Here's my direct line. So no more tentative appointments, no more placeholders, no more cancel if you feel like it. Let's get those firm appointments on the books so you don't have a rep get to a home and get a no-show. So that's the real-time experience, and actually what it'll do throughout the day is this little trophy icon will populate, and let's see if I have any data. I might not, because I just made my first call. Yep, not enough calls so far, but it'll populate and show the agent where they rank on a leaderboard. So every agent knows I'm number 1, I'm number 4, and they can see the agent in front of them and the agent behind them. Talk about a little friendly competition. Last thing I'll show you all is this dashboard suite over here on the left. And very simply, this is the mirror experience. So let's say you want to make sure that your folks are saying that opening question. This is a different demo account, and in this account, they say, what got you interested in our solution to start with? Well, you can see across your organization or any team, what % of the time are they actually doing that? So on the 15th, awesome, we got 100% of the time, but it dipped a little bit, and on the 22nd, we're down to 50%. Might want to talk to folks about that. Well, then you can dig in a layer deeper and say, agent by agent, who's doing the right stuff and who's not. So you have this quick visual to see that Brad is at 100% on 2 of his calls. David is at 88% on 27 calls, so he has a lot of calls under his belt and is still pretty consistent. Way to go. And of course, you can make that into a little table and sort by any of the different items that your users might hit. And you can even click this button on the left to make it full screen, automatically refresh every 10 minutes. And when your agents are all back in the contact center, that's a cool thing that you can have up as this big display so everyone can see where they rank in hitting the items that they need to hit. Last thing is the call by call view. So down here below, I can see Vincent Clark on the 23rd, 4:34 p.m. at a call 24 minutes long, and he did hit it. Let me see if I can zoom out just a second and toggle all the other items on. So now I'm able to see a picture, a map of which items he's hitting on his calls and which he isn't. So this one that was 3 minutes long, Vince, my friend, looks like you might have missed some of your items. Let's talk about that. But you did hit this last one here. how did you hear about us? And right over there takes you right to where it happened in the transcript. So you got the real-time experience coaching the agent, the dashboard experience helping guide managers, and together we call that real-time guidance. That's the demo I got for you all, and happy to move back to the slides to finish this up. All right, so today we talked about 30 by 30. Bobby, you want to talk a little bit about the results that folks are seeing on the Convoso side and contact rate. And Heather, I know you have a lot of texture there too, so would love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, so interestingly, you know, time after time, we see them. Well, it's not interesting. I mean, it's an obvious thing, but we see them changing the numbers, and boom, contact rate goes up. But again, it's a band-aid. So the thing that we've always seen really helps is making sure your calling strategies are right. You know, don't bombard them, don't call them every hour. Give some time. You know, come up with a strategy where you rest the leads for a little bit. You know, continue monitoring your numbers. Run the report that we have. Let it notify you that, you know, there's numbers that are missing in certain areas, and continuously, you know, check your reputation. So those three things really are hand in hand, play a big role, because if you harass people, nobody's going to be happy, and you know, FTC or FCC is going to be right behind your back. So you want to make sure you come up with good calling strategies, create a cadence. Like in Convoso, you have an ability of saying, you know, call them now, maybe on the second call count, wait X amount, on the third call count, wait a certain amount. And depending on the intent data you have, if it's high intent, maybe drop them a voicemail. You can get strategic with the voicemail. You know, the first voicemail left is this. The third voicemail left is maybe something like, hey, I've already left your voicemail. These can be all automated, and they give that personalized touch, which makes them feel like, okay, this is not a robot. It's just somebody that really is in contact with me and looking to, you know, provide me some service. So doing things like that in combination with you know, getting the right amount of numbers and monitoring your DIDs, and also trying to understand why are they getting flagged. You know, why is this number what happened? Why did it get flagged so quick? And then going back into the logs, you can search for that number in our platform and see, all right, you know, in one day I called, I don't know, maybe 2,000 or 20,000 people with this number. Well, yeah, that explains why you're bringing your numbers so quick. So the combination of that has made a huge difference for our customers, and they've really seen a tremendous increase in contact rate.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Bobby. I think that the number one thing I get when I'm talking to a new potential consultant client in a call center, it is usually overwhelmed, I guess is the word I would say. It is so granular. Now, though Bobby and I have an interesting friendship, I would say he's genius. He's got a brain that is unlike any I've ever seen, and he can understand, and he actually gets excited, like he's happy to look into data. And so, you know, that's his background, and I've done doing this 22 years. So to us, this is something exciting to talk about. Oh my gosh, did you hear Shake and Stir did this? But to the average client who is a, you know, a roofer or solar installer, this is overwhelming. It's technology, it's legal, it's scary, it's not interesting to most people. And so I get this general feeling of how are we going to make this work? It's super overwhelming. I know that my sales are down. It's usually kind of, this is how I usually end up in the business. I know my sales are down and I don't understand what's happening. So I want to simplify this kind of in a more broad approach. There's software and experts out there who can resolve these issues for you. In fact, I do it every single day. I've had a client who had a 500% increase in connectivity by switching software. They were on a click to call. They should have been on a dialer. They switched over. Their reps were averaging 1 to 2. They switched to, they're averaging 5 to 6 sales a day now, right? Literally by switching technology. And why? Spam likely, bad connectivity, and wrong dialing platform, wrong methodology. They were using a click to call, they should have been using a dialer. This is very common in my world. So to kind of simplify the complexities, I think the more you learn, the better, right? This is really interesting stuff, but you can resolve your connectivity by having the right technology and having a company that cares about these kind of things. You can resolve your connectivity issues. If you've seen that same October drop in connectivity, if you suspect you're spam likely, me, there's software out there 100% worth every penny you'll spend because you'll get that extra 30% rise. The first question in getting a sale is, can I talk to a person, right? Actually, the first question is, can I get legal data? The second question is, can I get that legal data on the phone, which is what Convoso is going to do. When you flip to the other side, now I've got these people on the phone, can I close the deal, right? And that's where Balto comes in. I think that you'll have, to Mark's point, you're never going to be able to listen to, if you have a 100-seat center, the 1 million outbound dials they could do. You're just not going to do that. But this technology can guide you in the right direction, help you make smart choices. So I think that the two of those, if you can imagine talking to 30% more people and closing 30% more sales with no additional costs, and actually what you'll find is you'll need less reps to do those two things. You actually have lower payroll and you'll have increased sales and better compliance. So it's a win-win-win. The other thing that we tried to shy off of or stay off of on this particular conversation is the added benefits of compliance. I've had learned through the hard ways of having lawsuits and the FTC and a number of different experiences throughout my career. And what I can tell you is that no one's factoring the fact that if you dial too many times with too low of a contact rate, or you say something's free, will save you 100% on your electricity bill, you're also not factoring the cost of legal and government agencies who begin to regulate as well. So in addition to speaking to more people, closing more sales, you're also cutting your legal costs and you're cutting payroll. So I know it sounds complicated, a lot of information, but there are softwares and tools out there like these two companies that can make it a lot simpler for you, and you'll see those results.
Boom, fantastic. Thank you all so much. This was wonderful. Please reach out to us. We have a demo request. We're giving away $50 gift cards. I can't believe that we had almost every single attendee stay on the entire hour. So thank you all so much. If you want to sign up for a Balto demo, we put a link in the chat. Want to sign up for a Convoso demo? There's a link in the chat, and you will get a $50 Amazon gift card. I swear, just come to the demo, see what you think. There's no downside, but we're really excited to have you, and thank you all for your time today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, folks.
Bye.